Eva, it's a pleasure to see you. It's online,
It's a pleasure.
but yeah, but it's a pleasure. Let's start with the question: what has it been like working during the pandemic? If you return to the European Parliament, what is like to work there now?
Well, first of all, Spaska, also very nice to see you, despite not being able to see you this year in person. But I think we have changed our work methods, just like everyone around the world. So indeed, we keep strict social distancing measures, but this does not prevent us from being online and in touch, not just with our constituency and citizens, but also with our stakeholders and partners, such as public libraries. So it's been a challenging time, I think, for all of us. And no matter how adaptive, of course, as institutions or businesses we are in this new reality, the personal contact in some matters, such as when we negotiate difficult files, it has been instrumental in the past. So in a way, it's not just adapting to a new reality when it comes to health measures, but it's also adapting to a new reality of negotiating, trying to persuade your colleagues on a topic. So definitely, it's new to all of us, but I think the world has adapted quite swiftly. And I see in all of that an opportunity that we can grasp, especially by using technological means. And I think right now, the moment we're having this interview, it is absolutely instrumental that we keep strict measures in order not to overburden our health professionals across Europe, but not only, as in a way we are witnessing that second wave right now.
You know that everyone waiting from Brussels and for your decision. And in this case, the recovery package Next Generation EU will play a key role in EU recovery. What do you hope to see in a priority of this package?
Well, to start with, I think the recovery package shows very clearly that the European Union demonstrates its ability to act decisively when citizens need it. So we need a strong answer to the health crisis, but also to the economic crisis that's developing, and the investment crisis in a way. So right now, it's very important that the European institutions deliver. And what I mean is that it's something that's not very clear to the majority of citizens, but there is a very serious proposal on the table, but the different institutions have to discuss it with one another in order for them to find a compromise. And now it's not the time for interinstitutional quarrels, which could delay the implementation of the recovery plan. I really think that the Next Generation EU could create some long-term growth, which will allow us to rely on financial support. So as EPP Group, we keep a very clear focus on supporting the SMEs in their efforts to become more resilient and sustainable, for example. And so we would really like to see advanced and fast decisions on the recovery or resilience facility funds in order for us to be able to reach the ambitious goals. And this is why we insist on making 37% of the recovery and resilience facility funds for green and 20% for digital transition, for example. But as I said, negotiations are still taking place, and I just hope they would be concluded earlier rather than later.
Thank you. You are in the ITRE committee. What EU priority are you focused on? Are there any interesting dossiers you are working on that you can share?
Yeah, so that's a committee that works. Yeah, so that's a committee that works in the sphere of industry, of research, of energy. It's covering basically a very wide range of topics. All of those topics are very important, both for the technological transition, but also for the energy transition that Europe is aiming at achieving in the next couple of years. In the past months, we've been working on the Green Deal legislation, on the climate law, on the Just Transition Fund, which more support the sustainable goals that we have put forward as Europe. But also in the same time, we're working currently and negotiating the Digital Europe program, which is a program for the next 7 years. It's an ambitious program which aims to make sure that we demand strengthening of certain parts of European competences, such as including artificial intelligence and digital skills into the curriculum, such as bridging the digital divide, which in some regions is much larger than others, but not only, also in focusing on achieving and establishing the EU digital hubs. So these are some of the priorities that the committee works on right now. But if you allow me, because I mentioned artificial intelligence, I have to say that the European Parliament is really wanting to influence the next wave of legislation and the next wave of developments in the industry. So that's why a few weeks ago, a special committee on AI in the digital age was set up, of which I am the spokesperson for the EPP group. And the reason why we think it's important to have such a forum and such a place is because we want to make sure that Europe leads in all sorts of technological advancements in the next couple of years. We want to make sure that we discuss the next cutting edge technologies and see whether they're in need of further stimulation to innovate, whether they're in need of legislation to protect better citizens, for example. And so this committee will be instrumental into paving the way for a Europe that truly builds on the opportunities it has, but most importantly, makes sure that they're untapped. So that technological potential is untapped into the industry, into the various sectors of the economy.
Yeah, our daily life is going more digital. And you're a friend of libraries, and I would ask you about where could library be most effective in contributing to EU priorities over the coming years?
Well, I think the biggest problem that we have nowadays is the disinformation we receive. So I think libraries could ensure this access to actual information while in the same time protecting fundamental freedoms. So I think libraries could play a very important role to facilitate the twin transition of the EU on its way to sustainability. And I'll give a couple of examples. I think in the past year, more than 4 million adults in the European Union use public library computers in order for them to support either themselves getting a job or learning how to write a cover letter, a CV, a motivation letter, and so on. And out of this 4 million, more than 1.5 million used library computers to apply for jobs. And a big part of that 1.5 million actually managed to secure the jobs thanks to the opportunities offered by public libraries. I also think that library staff could work with local municipalities, with local governments to help the local micro and small enterprises use new type of ICT services to find relevant EU funding and apply for it. It could help train professionals that are part of those enterprises, and so on and so forth. I've always been a very strong defender and believer that libraries could really contribute to so many of the transitions that we're going through. And I have seen a number of libraries doing exactly this across the continent and in my own country, Bulgaria. So I think it's fantastic the way they've managed to integrate themselves into this fastly changing world.
Yeah. What do you think? How Bulgarian libraries deal with the challenge of pandemic? What is your opinion?
Well, I think that overall libraries in Bulgaria have adapted very successfully to the new realities. I think during times of social isolation, it became very clear that reading, thinking, having the time to kind of go through your thoughts is extremely important in a moment when, you know, you're experiencing a very different change of life. It could help you reduce stress. It could help you to break away from your daily routine. It could also improve social habits. It could stimulate creativity, this thinking process that I mentioned. I think libraries' remote work has become of a true great importance to their patrons, but also potential users. In the new conditions, I think that libraries adapted very quickly with their new activities because they helped modern technologies be part of those activities, and those modern technologies were very well integrated into public libraries. So I think libraries prove very vital to basically the local dissemination also of COVID-19 related information. And that's why I said our weakness is all the disinformation that's spreading. And if you have reliable sources, such as the ones coming from public libraries, this could also help public authorities when we have state of emergency as well. So I think on top of that, also libraries truly pushed on their social media, but also websites, a lot of entertaining materials, but also educational materials, reading recommendations, videos, where, you know, popular personalities read texts to their children, and so I think it was very inspirational what was done on the part of libraries, and I'm sure it helped and affected many. I think that with the pandemic continuing to evolve, we need to look for other similar situations, like how to further enhance the image of libraries in this more challenging time. So I think there could be a little bit more coordinating moves where certain facilities, part of the transition from, you know, more, so to say, traditional place of library are offered online, and many already are, but perhaps we could increase that number. There could be different meetings of reading clubs happening online, and I'm sure that's already happening somewhere, because I think those spaces will in turn prove as key facilitators to also the digital transition that so many regions are in need of, and EU society as a whole. So I personally see libraries as part of this very complex and big equation that we have to achieve in the years to come.
And what about the Code Week? This year it was different. What is your opinion about the activities in Bulgaria? Is the same? Is online or offline?
Well, I think with education moving almost entirely, basically online in the past months, students have been, in a way, craving for in-person activities, and libraries, I think, in a way, they stepped in Bulgaria. During the ongoing week, actually, right now, I think in Bulgaria, there has been more than 20 in-person workshops. Of course, obliging certain measures. And those students between 10 and 14-year-old are getting that invaluable contact with other students that are not necessarily their peers. So you, on one hand, learn to code. On the other hand, you are also given the opportunity to meet new friends and people with whom you can work on projects. I think the exercise that is being undertaken is extremely important, not just for the digital skills, but also for the interpersonal skills that one can develop. And I wanted to to congratulate that, you know, so much is being done, not just on coding, but on robotics, on programs such as the Bee-Bot and Finch robot, or the Lego robots. And I think that a lot of the libraries also use STEM constructors to teach 3D and virtual reality basics. So I think it's the type of thing we have to continue, not because it's a tradition, but because it actually helps students be more creative. It helps them socially improve their skills, and it also puts them in an environment that's different than their own school or their own household. So I would personally like to see more often code weeks organized. And we know that there are a number of organizations that do that, but perhaps even within libraries, we can do it more often, so that we attract more talented kids or others that are inspired by what is out there for them to do, hence bridging the digital divide that we talked about.
And thank you, Eva. And I also want to share with you that one of the issue of the public libraries in Bulgaria now is the mass digitalization and e-books. And we have a lot of conversations with the Ministry of Culture, how to organize and how to make the program for this, because it will take time. And I hope that we will support our efforts. I know that you are on that path, and maybe we will support our efforts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. And I hope to see you in Bulgaria, in Sofia or another place.
Yeah. I think in the next months, we'll have to see each other more often online. But I very much hope that we'll get through this second very difficult period for Europe soon rather than later. And I hope we find more inspiration in actually the traditional way of doing so, through reading, through interacting, through thinking. So I hope I can see a little bit more of that, even though it's helped through technology, but it's good that there's a means to get to that information and knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.